The National Academy of Sciences states unequivocally that creationism has no place in any science curriculum at any level. That a handful of religious fundamentalists hold a PhD in science is insufficient to conclude that there is a divided scientific community. There is no hostility to evolution among the secular members of the scientific community. Hostility to evolution is reserved with those with a monotheistic agenda. Thus, the only real division that exists is a division between the scientific community and the religious fundamentalist community. I'd like to correct my opponent who has a PhD in chemistry. He said that the smallest particle that you can have while retaining the properties of aluminum are the atom, and that is not true. I don't have a PhD in chemistry or science, and I know that the proper word to describe that is the word element.
Okay. Now it's time for questions and answers, and each speaker will have 2 minutes to present their answers. And this question is for both speakers, I'm assuming. It says, oh, well, I'm sorry. Question for the evolutionists. Since Jesus, 11 of his apostles, and thousands, maybe even millions of believers gave their life for what they believe, as believers, we believe that lying is a sin. What keeps scientists and scientific community from lying?
Ethics. And the fact that they are held accountable to their peers. Because scientific tests must be repeatable, and the results of those tests must be repeatable universally, anywhere. If those tests are fraudulent, the people who are doing that are going to get caught. And when they're caught, they're going to be made fools of in the scientific community. And they are often done, that does happen.
Okay. This is to Dr. Molimpa. It's asking, speaking of statistics, what is the chance of a dead person coming back to life? Out of the billions of people past and present, Jesus and Lazarus rising from the dead is extremely ridiculous and improbable, isn't it?
I don't think you explain the resurrection scientifically. I happen to have had prostate cancer a year and a half ago. I've been healed of it. What's the chance of that mathematically? Probably none. But I serve a God who walked on water. I serve a God who healed the lame, the blind, the deaf, unstopped. He didn't do it by science. I don't know what the probability, probably none. But there is a miraculous element to both creation and other things such as the resurrection.
Next question. Mr. Young, why did you reject the idea of a divine being?
There are many reasons for rejecting theology. The last belief that I let go of was the belief in some God. I let go of all of the other beliefs first, and because they were inconsistent with reality, and they were inconsistent with my ethics as a human being, I eventually let go of my belief in God because I could find no real evidence to support that belief. And I had to be honest with myself.
Next question, Dr. Arlo. Could you define the second law of thermodynamics without dumbing it down? Please put it in terms of increased entropy in closed systems and explain what closed system you are applying it to in your example.
This is an argument that's used a lot. I don't claim to know everything about thermodynamics. I've had 3 courses in thermodynamics. One of the illustrations I'm going to show, but I wouldn't have time, is if I drop some T's on the overhead projector, it would scatter. Now, I could take those tees and arrange them in a stick man. In order, when I said my definition was systems left to themselves, okay? Systems left to themselves go to a condition of greater disorder, randomness, or probability. Okay. Now, I could take those tees and arrange them in a stick man. It went from disorder to order, but there was intelligence and there was energy. That's how you get from disorder to order. My opponent talked about crystal formation. If you took a bunch of marbles and dropped them onto a Chinese checkerboard, it would go from disorder to order because there's a predetermined pattern. Crystal formation, the crystal type form like a cubic closest formation of those things, it depends on the size of the ions. Different ions and different molecules form different shapes because of the size of the ions. Same thing, we mentioned the snowflake. The water has a bent molecule, and it lends itself to the hexagonal pattern that we see on the microscope of snowflakes.
This question is for Mr. Young. How can you explain the miracles that you saw as a former preacher to evolution?
Self-delusion. I can see what I want if I want it bad enough. And if I go looking for an angel behind every cloud, sooner or later I'm going to start seeing them.
Can we both answer the question?
Yes.
That means that I have been deluded. I have not been deluded. What I have is real and genuine. I'm sorry that he became deluded. By the way, probably more people have lost their faith over the teaching of evolution than any other teaching. But the problem is that evolution is not scientific. Not observable, repeatable, and true science doesn't contradict the Bible. My opponent doesn't seem to, I'm not trying to be offensive, but he doesn't know the difference between an atom and an element. He just proved it by a statement. Aluminum is an element. The smallest particle of an element that has the properties of the elements is the atom. There are some 92 naturally occurring elements. But so you can't go by the scientific examples of a friend here. He doesn't have a background to understand it.
And I'll maintain that he will get an F on his science test if he puts atom to the question of what is the smallest particle to maintaining the properties of aluminum. If he answers atom, he's going to get an F.
Okay, each speaker has 2 minutes, and after you've spoken your 2 minutes, that's it. We're going on to the next question. This is addressed for you, Dr. Arlo. The advocate for creation says that he doesn't have a problem with variation within a kind. He just has a problem with evolution from kind to kind. Their question is, define the word kind, if I'm reading that correctly.
Okay, I think it's very difficult to really determine what a kind is, what a species is. I think Carolus Linnaeus, when he developed a taxonomy, he tried to determine what kinds and species. Probably the most common definition would be a self-replicating, self-breeding type thing. You know, there's things within that can breed one with another. And even that gets a little bit tough because there are things like mules that are products of a donkey and a horse. Now, apparently they must be the same kind, but yet they don't reproduce. So it's a little difficult to say exactly this is one kind and not another kind.